discover the amazing transformation, then found out she got married. John squinted against the glow of the afternoon sun filtering through the attic window. His hands rested on a dusty box labeled Emily. It was a bittersweet gesture, one that felt like tearing at the very fabric of his life. The old house had been more than wood and nails. It was where laughter had echoed in the halls, where bedtime stories had unfolded, and where every room was steeped in memories. Selling it felt like trading away his daughter's childhood, a decision tainted by the weight of economic strain. The whispers on the street were a constant rumble in his mind, like a hammer pounding away at his heart, questioning his ability to provide. What kind of father couldn't even keep his own home? As he rummaged through the box, he pulled out a stack of letters bound with a frayed ribbon. Each page was filled with Emily's ink-swirled handwriting, revealing snippets of her teenage dreams and vulnerabilities. One letter cut through his heart like a saw through wood, her words revealing a longing for connection he hadn't realized was there, her fears about navigating adulthood echoing back to him. A silent plea for support he hadn't fully understood. Did he ever really listen? Panic twisted in his chest as memories flooded in. Years spent working long hours while Emily grew up just out of reach. Tears were never shed, but something heavy settled in the air, suffocating intimacy. As days turned into a blur of real estate agents and unsolicited advice, John felt the weight of nostalgia pressing down on him like a load of lumber he couldn't carry anymore. The for sale sign outside felt like a neon announcement of his failures, a testament to a love that had faded into the distance. He hesitated, time slipping away as he thought about the house becoming an empty vessel for another family's stories. Was he ready? Could he really sign away bits of her childhood? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as John contemplated the finality of his decisions, he stumbled upon a shocking revelation. A text from a mutual friend popped up on his phone, revealing that Emily had gotten married back home in a ceremony he hadn't even known about. A tidal wave of betrayal crashed over him, drowning out the whispers of the town with its sheer force, twisting his gut into knots. How had he missed this monumental moment? The realization that perhaps Emily felt she couldn't rely on him cut deeper than any tool he wielded. Each thought spiraled into confusion, amplifying his self-doubt. Did he push her away with his silence? Had he been so focused on measurements and materials that he neglected the very essence of being a father? Standing at this crossroads, John felt a raging storm inside him, a raw conflict between confronting her or allowing this distance to grow, potentially severing the last thread of connection. The house grew quiet, a stark reminder of the choices laid before him. With every glance at the letters strewn across the floor, the anguish of past misunderstandings coiled tighter around him. Could he find the words to bridge the gap? Or was this the moment everything slipped away for good? The sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows in the attic that felt almost like specters of his past mistakes. John's heart raced as he grappled with the reality of Emily's marriage, each beat serving as a reminder of the years spent in distant silence, communication reduced to perfunctory texts and casual check-ins. With every letter that crinkled between his fingers, he felt more like a ghost haunting the remnants of their relationship. What kind of father allowed this to happen? Suddenly, a sense of urgency surged within him. He needed to act, to bridge the chasm that had formed between them. But how? His mind swirled with possible approaches. He could call her, reach out in anger or disappointment, but would that even help? Or would it push her even further away? Restlessness gnawed at him, a stark contrast to the stillness of the old house. Every creak of the floorboards seemed to mock his indecision. With a sudden revelation, the letters became more than relics. They transformed into instructions for action. He rushed to the kitchen, grabbing a notepad and pen, driven by an instinct he hadn't felt in years, a desire to connect. He began to list things he thought he could say, moments they could share, and feelings he'd buried deep. Memories flowed onto the page like a forgotten stream of clarity. There was the day they went camping, the stories she told on stormy evenings, the triumph in her eyes when she finally rode a bike without training wheels. Each memory ignited a facet of his love that had been hidden beneath layers of regret. The more he wrote, the more he realized how unprepared he was to face her, the daughter he had always loved fiercely but had failed to support. Did he even know her anymore? His heart sank as he acknowledged the years spent focusing on work, on the demands of everyday life that had overshadowed his priority as her father. But he also felt a flicker of hope, a chance to rebuild, to finally demonstrate the love he had kept at bay. Could his choices really be transformed into something meaningful? He pressed the pen harder against the paper, determined to outline a path forward. No more excuses, no more hiding behind the safety of his own fears. As he finished the letter, adrenaline coursed through him. He folded it carefully and placed it on the kitchen table, a tangible sign of his intent. He was ready to act. Was he willing to risk vulnerability after so long? He debated calling her, but reluctance crept in. What would he say? "I didn't know you got married," felt inadequate for exposing the depth of his disappointment in himself. Sitting back in silence, doubt clung to him like a thick fog. Now that he had written his thoughts, the next step loomed larger, threatening to swallow him whole. Would he just send the letter without speaking to her first? Or could he muster up the courage to face her directly? The phone buzzed again, another text notification flickering on the screen. Emily's name flashed before him. Should he just ask her point blank what happened? The distance crafted out of years of silence weighed heavily against the urge to reach out. Perhaps confronting this discomfort head-on was the only way to reforge their relationship. With resolve coiling within him, John took a breath and hit call. The line rang endlessly, and with each ring, he second-guessed his entire decision. Would she answer? Would she even want to talk to him? Suddenly, he realized life had just placed a crucial turning point directly in his path. The urgency of the moment felt overwhelming. In that instant, he understood that bridging the gap meant facing the discomfort, embracing the risk of rejection. What if she refused to engage, to even listen? Indecision threatened to paralyze him, but before he could spiral into self-doubt again, a voice on the other end finally broke through the tension. "Hello?" John's heartbeat quickened as he steadied himself, ready to confront not just the distance between them, but the invisible walls he had built around himself for years. The time had come to face the truths he had long avoided, but the question remained, would Emily be willing to listen? The silence that followed her greeting felt heavier than the weight of a mountain pressing down on him. John wrestled with his thoughts, trying to hold on to the fragments of courage that had propelled him to dial her number. The moment she said hello had shattered the illusion of control he had tried to maintain. Now, as he took a breath ready to speak, the words caught in his throat, tangled in a web of years of regret and longing. "Emily," he finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper, crumbling under the intensity of the moment. "Dad?" Her voice was cautious, layered with confusion. It was exactly the tone he had feared, the reminder that years of silence had erected a wall between them. He wrestled with the urge to explain, to dive into the emotional abyss of their lost years. But what did he want to? He had lost the language of fatherhood, and each idea felt murky, almost foreign. Instead of a rehearsed speech, he decided to speak straight from the heart, hoping that authenticity would bridge their chasm. "Can we talk? There are things I need to say," he stumbled, unsure if these were the right words, but knowing he had to start somewhere. "Sure," she hesitated, her wariness evident. "Is this about the letters?" He closed his eyes, the letters looming, encapsulations of everything left unsaid, remnants of a love that had faded into formality. "It's more than that. I've thought a lot about what's happened between us, and I don't want to hide from it anymore." As he spoke, he felt a gust of clarity surging through him. With each word, he grasped pieces of his past, piecing together the man he wanted to be. Vulnerability was a daunting companion, but as he explained his regrets and missteps, he began to untangle the knots of guilt that had held him captive for too long. The line went quiet. He imagined her processing this, grappling with his raw honesty, the tenacious struggle evident in her silence. "I didn't mean to leave you out of my life. I just what?" she asked, sharp and sudden. "You're not the only one who's hurt. I grew up not knowing if you'd even be there when I needed you. It's not just about missing texts. It's my entire life." The weight of her words struck him with visceral force. He felt a wave of shame crashing over the resolve he had just built. She was right. He couldn't deflect the responsibility. "I can't change the past, but I want to work on making it better now." There was a small pause. He sensed a shift in her demeanor. Perhaps she was willing to engage with this fragmented relationship. "You have no idea how hard this is for me," she finally replied, the tremor in her voice revealing a hint of vulnerability that mirrored his own. "I know it's not easy," he said, desperation mingling with hope. "I loved you, baby girl, but I lost sight of how to show you that love, and I don't want to lose you again." The sincerity in his voice teetered on the edge of pleading. "I just heard that you got married, and all I could think about was how I wasn't there. I should have been." "Why now, Dad?" she questioned, her tone softening slightly, revealing the cracks where resentment met curiosity. "Why the sudden change of heart?" "I'm tired of hiding and pretending that everything is okay. I've been avoiding my own truths, and I need to face them, for you and for myself, but I can't do this alone." As the words hung between them, John felt for the first time that he was fighting his fears, standing tall against the shadows of their past. He had taken a step toward restoring his relationship with Emily, embracing the chaotic mess they had both experienced. There was a nervous energy in the air, the pulse of possibility buzzing at the edge of the conversation. Yet small flickers of uncertainty still danced around them like fireflies in the twilight of their reunion. "Maybe I can think about meeting up, talking face to face," she suggested tentatively, allowing a sliver of hope to break through the heaviness. "Absolutely. Whenever you're ready, just say the word." He hung up the call, a mixture of relief and uncertainty churning within him. Had he begun to slowly grind away the barriers between them, or had he opened new wounds? What would their first meeting reveal? Would she meet him with an open heart, or hold on to her guarded resentment? As he stared out at the fading light, a new question nestled in his chest. Was he prepared for the truths that awaited his steps into the light of their reconnection? John spent the next few days oscillating between moments of desperate optimism and paralyzing dread. As he stared at his reflection each morning, he couldn't help but study the man he had become. Decisions he'd made years ago felt like stones tied to his feet now, dragging him down with guilt. Yet, if he allowed himself to hope just a bit, maybe he could tread water long enough to break free. The idea of meeting Emily hung over him like a storm cloud ready to burst. He found himself pacing the living room, rehearsing potential conversations in his head. How would he frame the years of absence? Was there a way to express the weight of his grief without drowning her in it? These thoughts spiraled into a chaotic mess where he felt both like a fraud and a father all at once. After days of mental turmoil, he made a decision. He would not approach this meeting like a man clinging to old wounds, but rather as someone ready to embrace the future, no matter how fraught it may be. He revisited the letters he had written over the years, unmailed confessions filled with love and regret. Each letter had been a desperate grasp at connection, yet they were now a testament to his failings. The day of the meeting arrived, and as he stood before the cafe where they had decided to meet, he felt as though he was on the brink of an immense reality check. He was determined to bring not just the shame and remorse, but also a willingness to listen to Emily's truth. Was he truly willing to confront whatever she had to say? He arrived early, seeking solace in the warm aroma of fresh coffee, attempting to calm the racing in his heart. As he sat in a corner booth, the sun filtering through the window, he couldn't help but reflect on the nuances of fatherhood. It was less about providing material things and more about being present. He was painfully aware of how absent he had been, not just in physical presence, but emotionally too. Minutes turned into an eternity as he waited, anxiety building in the pit of his stomach. Every table that filled around him heightened the feeling of vulnerability. What if she arrived and was still unyielding? What if she couldn't let go of the hurt? The door swung open, and John's heart raced as he turned to see Emily step inside, her expression guarded yet curious. He waved hesitantly, and she approached, a melange of uncertainty and resolve reflected in her eyes. "Hey," she said, her voice quieter than he remembered, but it held a distinct strength. "Hey," he replied, feeling the gravity of this moment pulling them together, yet also threatening to push them apart. Silence settled between them as she slid into the seat across from him. The initial small talk felt hollow, as if they were trying to fill a void that words could barely touch. Watching her carefully, he recognized that each moment of hesitation on her part was a step toward reconciliation. This was uncharted territory for both of them, filled with raw emotions and unexpressed truths. Taking a deep breath, he leaned forward. "I want to hear about your life, everything. I know I've missed so much, and I'm ready to listen." Her eyes widened slightly, revealing a flicker of surprise, and then something deeper, an urge to share, to be understood. "It hasn't been easy," she started slowly, her voice trembling with the weight of her experiences. "I had to learn everything on my own, and I wanted you to be there." John felt a lump form in his throat as he listened. Each revelation from her felt like a piece of a puzzle he had inadvertently lost, and now it was being put together in real time. The nurturing side of him, the father he longed to be, flared up. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. As they exchanged stories, John suddenly realized that this conversation was less about him seeking forgiveness and more about creating a foundation for understanding. John felt strength build within him. The sight of Emily shedding the confines of their past as she spoke freed him from the shackles of guilt. Their journey had only just begun, but they had taken the initial steps together, illuminating the path ahead. But even as he felt hope growing, a deeper fear nagged at him. Would their progress matter if he never learned how to shed the shame of his past choices? The weight of his decisions lingered like a storm on the horizon, threatening to overshadow their fragile reunion. As they spoke, a troubling thought dawned on him. What would it take to truly earn her trust, and what sacrifices might he need to make? As John pondered this crucial question, the cafe buzzed around them, oblivious to the giants they were confronting across the table. The moment felt pivotal, and he sensed something monumental was about to shift in both their lives. As Emily finished her story, he could feel the energy in the room morph into something charged with potential, a fuse waiting to ignite. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words were caught between the thrill of resolution and the shadow of his past decisions. And just as he was about to speak, a sudden realization struck him. There was more beneath the surface of this meeting than mere nostalgia. He leaned in closer, determined to confront everything, the emotions, the expectations, and the looming reality of what it truly meant to be a father. With his heart pounding in his chest, he asked, "What is it you truly need from me right now?" The air thickened with tension as Emily stared into his eyes, and a storm of emotions flickered across her face. It was clear the moment of truth had arrived, and neither of them would leave unchanged. The unfolding of their reconnection lay in her forthcoming response, and John was prepared to face whatever came next. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze as Emily absorbed his question. The cafe buzzed around them, yet the clamor felt distant, consumed by the weight of their conversation. John's heart raced, anticipating the answer that could redefine everything. "I need you to be honest," she finally declared, her voice steadying amidst the storm of unspoken feelings. "Not just about the past, but about who you are now. I need to know if you're still the man who left, or if you actually want to be a father in my life." Her words struck John like a pulse of electricity. They demanded an immediate reckoning, a challenge to confront not only his past, but the version of himself he aspired to be. In that moment, he understood the fragility of the bridge they were building. It hinged on authenticity, and he had to summon the courage to step into the light. "I won't shield you from the truth," he replied, grappling with the enormity of his own acknowledgments. "I made selfish choices, ones I deeply regret. I can't take back what I lost, but I want to understand how to be part of your life now. I'm here because I want to change, for you and for me." Emily's expression shifted, uncertainty mixing with a flicker of hope. He felt her walls quivering, and it lit something within him. Hopeful yet trepidatious, he knew he had to dig deeper, even if it brought more discomfort. "I've spent years thinking I had to have everything figured out to come back, but the truth is, I don't." His honesty flowed like a river needing to break through a dam. "I still feel lost at times. Does that make me unworthy of being your father?" Her gaze bore into him as she seemed to dissect every word, weighing his sincerity against his past. The question hung heavier than before, like an anchor in the still air. Would she see him differently, now as a flawed man? "Seeking redemption? I don't expect you to have all the answers," she finally said, her voice softening. "But I need to see you try. Show up for me, John, not just today, but consistently." The clarity in her request shattered any remaining illusions he had about superficial change. He realized that this was not a one-time opportunity. It was a commitment to persistence, vulnerability, and growth. "I can do that," he affirmed, each word carrying his resolve. "I'll prove to you that I'm here to stay." As the weight of unfulfilled expectations began to lift, a new tension permeated the atmosphere. John couldn't shake the sense that they were teetering on the edge of something transformative. Alongside belief and hope, doubt lingered, an omnipresent reminder of his past transgressions. He watched Emily processing his words, wresting control of the narrative that had previously been so dominated by absence. But it was her next question that turned the tables again. "What about your life? You seem different, but who are you becoming?" John's mind raced. What formed him in these years apart? The thought of admitting his failures was daunting. Would the scars of his choices paint a picture of someone broken, or instead reflect enduring resilience? "Honestly," he said, gathering his thoughts, "I've spent a lot of time running away from accountability. But the truth is, life has never seemed worth living without connections, especially not with you." The silence stretched endlessly as Emily processed his admission, weighing his vulnerability against her reservations. He sensed the pulse of their conversation could shift dramatically. They were at a crossroads. He leaned closer, his voice lowered into a conspiratorial hush. "What if this isn't just about rebuilding our relationship? What if I'm here to discover who I really am, portions of myself I've neglected?" The table shifted between them, charged with urgency, and the spark ignited something deep within Emily's eyes. This wasn't merely a reconciliation, it was an invitation to explore uncharted territories together, realizing they both could redefine their identities. Her next question lingered in the air like a whisper, but its implications echoed loudly. Then what do we do next? As the world outside the cafe continued on, John felt the first flicker of clarity amidst the chaos of change. The journey would be fraught with uncertainty, but as he met her gaze, he understood that facing this adventure required the same daring spirit he was now ready to adopt. With the weight of possibility hanging between them, he replied with newfound determination. We start by embracing the truth, our truths, all the messy, imperfect bits, and then we build together. The moment felt charged with potential, and John sensed the unfolding drama of their shared lives was only just beginning. Each choice, each conversation would be a building block, and the foundation they laid today might pave the path for tomorrow. As they strategized their next steps, longing for a connection that transcended the past, an unsettling thought pierced through his resolve. Would confronting the burden of his choices reveal strength or unravel the very fabric of their fragile bond? In that moment of uncertainty, John realized that the adventure ahead would be as profound as the choices that had led him to this pivotal meeting. Would he be able to navigate both past mistakes and future dilemmas in pursuit of the father he wanted to be? Each heartbeat amplified the stakes, leading John to ask himself, was he truly prepared for the echoes of his past to collide with the dreams he harbored for the future? The cafe began to empty, the dim light casting elongated shadows as chairs scraped against the tiled floor. Outside, the world buzzed with the lives of strangers, but for John and Emily, time felt suspended at a precipice. A decision loomed ahead, not just for him, but for them both. The stakes had never been higher. John took a deep breath, his mind racing through the potential tributaries of their discussion. "So, how do we start?" he asked, the wariness in his voice barely veiled. This was the first step of many towards offsetting a thick layer of regret. But the desire to actively create something new bubbled beneath the surface. "I think you have to decide what being a father means to you," Emily said, her gaze shifting to a group of laughing friends leaving the cafe. "It can't be just about showing up physically. It's emotional, too." Her words struck a chord. He had spent far too long running from the emotional commitments that made life meaningful. How could he show up in ways that mattered? Being physically present wouldn't redeem his past. He had to cultivate a genuine connection, a process grounded in vulnerability and responsibility. "I've been living like a specter of my former self," John confessed, his voice barely above a murmur. "In the past, I thought distance was easier, but avoiding the hard stuff didn't keep the pain from following me," he admitted, haunted memories flitting across his mind, echoes of decisions that had removed him from the life he should have embraced. "Now I see how false that was, how damaging it has been." Emily nodded, the corner of her mouth quirking up almost imperceptibly, signaling a shared understanding. Acknowledging mistakes is step one, but how do we transform those acknowledgments into something actionable? He pondered the question, instantaneously overwhelmed by the weight of it, yet invigorated by the potential answers. "I need to start by really listening to you, learning from you, because engaging in the little parts will enrich whatever bond we create." "Good, but also allow yourself to be vulnerable, John. It can't just be one-sided," she replied. The challenge gripped him with both excitement and anxiety. Allowing someone closer would mean exposing himself further, and somewhere within lurked the sound of doubt, echoing questions from long ago. But if he wanted to reshape his version of fatherhood, he had to relinquish control, embrace the chaos of authentic connection. Within that uncertainty was the spark of possibility. It reminded him of a book he had read years ago, the one that described fear as a door, one that needed to be pushed open, not avoided entirely. Now was the time to confront his fears head on. "What if we start with something small?" John ventured, deliberately slow with his words. "I could take you to dinner, your choice of place. We can talk about anything you want, goals, fears, or even just sharing silly memories." Emily's expression brightened. "That sounds good. It'll take time, but I appreciate that you want to invest in this." John felt a rush of relief. It ignited something deep within, a belief that maybe, just maybe, they could build from honesty. But with those ripples of hope came the grit of reality, the knowledge that relationships weren't stitched together overnight. As they finalized their tentative plans, John knew that navigating their complex histories meant braving emotional storms that had long been buried. Each dinner conversation would reveal layers of understanding, tapping into who they were now rather than dwelling on who they had been. Preparing for these moments felt daunting, yet there was also a thrill pulsating through him. He had to be ready to peel back the layers of his past, to share the painful parts, and simultaneously reveal the elements of his life that still shimmered with possibility. Days crawled ahead, and as John stewed and thought, a nagging question unfurled in the corners of his mind. What if, despite his efforts, Emily didn't find value in the father he was trying to become? The specter of doubt began to creep back in. The next morning, as John entered the office, he felt the familiar tightening of pressure within the walls of his professional life. Can emotional growth and a striving for personal redemption coexist with workplace responsibilities? His boss's voice rang through the air. "You're late, John. This isn't a charity. We have deadlines to hit." The world hadn't paused for his personal evolution. He needed to find a way to strike a balance. His family life could no longer be relegated to crumbs of his time, nor could his burgeoning responsibility shift to neglect. Compartmentalizing emotions wasn't an option. In that meeting, he spotted a potential shift. Each connection and project became an opportunity for growth, not just as a worker, but as a father. Would he be able to forge bonds in both realms, paving the way toward the transformation he desperately sought? As he threw his head back and laughed at the absurdity of the situation, a father trying to find his way at work and at home, he realized he had to act. The uncharted waters of his relationship with Emily mirrored the professional challenges he faced. And just as current circumstances began to converge, another question floated into being, knocking at his consciousness. How could he forge a new identity while continuing to grapple with the remnants of his past? A sense of urgency weighed heavily on him. Perhaps the time had come not just to face his history in personal realms, but to confront the fears lurking in his professional life too. The morning's chaos blurred into the mundanity of work as John navigated through his tasks, the straining pressure building underneath the surface. His mind often returned to the conversation with Emily, pulling him in directions he wasn't quite prepared for. He wondered if becoming a better father meant he had to dismantle his professional barriers as well. In the conference room, a meeting loomed like a storm cloud. He could feel the weight of his colleagues' expectations intensifying the scrutiny with which they viewed his every word. These familiar faces, once sources of camaraderie, now felt more like adversaries as John wrestled with being both dedicated at work and sincere at home. As the presentation droned on, John's gaze drifted beyond the projector screen. He was less absorbed in charts and figures than in thoughts of being a father. What if Emily's willingness to invest in their relationship didn't carry over into his work life? He needed to show commitment to both. "John?" His boss's voice snapped him back into focus, eyebrows raised in clear impatience. "What do you think about the projection for next quarter?" His gut twisted. "We need to reassess our approach to customer engagement," he responded cautiously. "Perhaps direct feedback could guide us in recalibrating our goals." The room shifted slightly, the tension palpable as John's insight cut through the air. An unexpected silence followed, with stares mingling confusion and mild admiration. But beneath the accolades stirred long-held fears of his ability to lead effectively. Was he willing to embrace vulnerability even here? When the meeting wrapped up, John felt a flicker of confidence surging through him, emboldened by the unexpected satisfaction of being heard. Maybe, he thought, if he could find his footing in this notorious corporate jungle, he could apply that same sense of belonging with Emily. With these dual milestones anchoring him, he imagined the waves of transformation cresting higher. Later that afternoon, John picked up the phone, feeling the weight of his past choices that had led him astray. As he scrolled through the contacts, he hesitated before calling his younger sister, the one person whose guidance often helped tether him to the ground. "Hey, it's me," he said, attempting to inject warmth into his voice. "Do you have a minute?" "Of course. What's going on?" she replied, her tone brightening at the sound of his voice. "I'm trying to figure out some things," he admitted, his heart racing as he contemplated revealing the struggles. "It's about being a father and how to balance everything." After a brief pause, he continued, "I feel like I'm fighting two battles, one at work where it seems I have to prove myself constantly, and another at home where I want to reconnect but don't know how. John, being authentic is half the battle. They're not two entirely different spheres. They'll inevitably influence each other. Owning your journey doesn't just apply to being a father. It matters at work too," she advised. That glimmer of wisdom wrapped around him, urging him forward as he considered what it would mean to approach both aspects of his life with the same honesty. The epiphany settled in. Vulnerability was not a weakness. It was an opportunity to engage more deeply, both with Emily and within his career. As the week rolled into the next, anticipation swirled as he prepared for his dinner with Emily. In the quiet hours leading up to it, he felt an electric mix of anxiety and hope. This meal could rewrite the foundations of their relationship while setting a precedent for how he conducted himself at work. Yet, lurking beneath his enthusiasm was a creeping dread that as he began to rise, there was still an unresolved darkness. What if the old specters of failure haunted not just his personal life, but threatened to deliver a fatal blow to his professional aspirations? That evening, as he dressed for dinner, John caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror, an image of a man on the brink of new beginnings, standing at a crossroad. As he stepped outside, the crisp air hit, invigorating him. But as his heart raced with newfound clarity, a sharp pang of doubt surged. What if the progress he had envisioned shattered against the reality of the past decisions he could not escape? With these conflicts hanging heavily in the air, John headed to meet Emily, feeling a distinct sense of urgency. Would he summon the strength needed to confront what lied ahead, or would he falter under the weight of internal contention? Just as he reached for the door handle, a final chilling thought sent a ripple of panic through him. How much was he willing to risk to carve out a new identity? As John approached the restaurant, the warm light spilled onto the sidewalk, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling within him. He entered, the inviting aroma of spices and sizzles momentarily grounding him. He spotted Emily seated at a cozy table, a soft smile gracing her face. Her presence was a soothing balm, yet as he approached, the knot in his stomach tightened. "Hey, you made it," she greeted, her voice cheerful but laced with a tenuous undercurrent that left him apprehensive. John sat, all too aware of the delicate weight of the moment. This dinner wasn't just a meal, it was a declaration, a potential pivot point in their relationship and his life. "Yeah," he breathed, trying to gather his thoughts. The small talk flowed awkwardly, snippets of their history tumbling into the conversation like errant pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. He could feel an invisible barrier between them, a wall erected by unspoken fears. "Really nice spot," he commented, attempting to anchor himself in the shared experience of their evening. Emily nodded, her gaze flitting between the menu and his face. He could see she was searching for something. Reassurance, perhaps? As they ordered, John felt the burden of his thoughts escalate. Emily, sensing his tension, leaned forward, concern etched on her features. "Hey, you okay? You seem a bit off tonight." "Honestly, I've been thinking a lot," he admitted, the weight of his vulnerability pressing down. The dread of confessing pulled at him, yet her steady gaze urged him to continue. "About us, about being a better father. I want to show our daughter that I can balance both worlds, but sometimes I feel stuck between being a good dad and a good employee." Her eyes softened, unwavering. "John, you don't have to do it alone. Just like you said, you can be honest about your struggles. I think it's great that you want to improve, but you don't need to be perfect." Confidence surged alongside the fear. This moment wasn't just his confession. It was an opportunity for presenting the unvarnished truth about himself. "Then let me be honest. I've been so worried about what everyone expects from me at work, I forgot to really be there for you and our daughter." "What made you realize that?" she probed gently, her earnestness drawing him deeper into the introspection. "I had a conversation with my sister. She reminded me that authenticity matters, at home and work. It made me see that these two worlds aren't separate. They can reinforce each other. I don't want to feel like I'm putting on a facade anymore," he recounted, the words tumbling out with an urgency that echoed the raw truth he was finally claiming. Emily smiled, the tension in her shoulders visibly dissipating. "I appreciate you saying that. I want us to be partners in this journey." Her acceptance resonated with him, and for the first time, he could envision a collaborative future, one where burdens were shared rather than shouldered alone. He suddenly grasped the potential for positive change, not just for himself, but as a foundation for their family dynamics. Yet, as the conversation deepened, a shadow darted through the corners of his mind, a creeping realization that his battle at work is still very much alive. If he exposed his vulnerabilities at home, would he appear weak professionally? The stakes were high, and he could not afford to falter amidst this newfound clarity. "How do you think that translates to our daughter?" Emily asked, drawing him back from the edge of that precipice. John contemplated her question, a swirl of possibilities forming in his mind. "I guess it means showing her that it's okay to navigate uncertainty, to seek help." As the night unfolded, moments of unguarded laughter and heartfelt connection wove a tapestry of renewed trust between them. Yet, just as the lightness threatened to cement itself, the ailing specter of doubt hovered ominously. Would the strides he was making extend beyond this intimate setting? Finally, as they parted, John felt a flicker of hope igniting within him, still overshadowed by uncertainty. What if he could not only embrace the evolution of his identity, but also advocate for it in the workplace? With every step homeward, he understood he stood at a crossroads yet again. This time, however, he felt empowered to carve a path forward, a path illuminated not by fear, but guided by the profound lessons he had begun to embrace. Could he face the corporate expectations with the same authenticity thriving within him now? As he stepped through the door of his home, one question loomed larger than any other. Was he ready to confront the professional challenges that awaited him, determined to rewrite not only his story, but also the narrative surrounding every potential conflict waiting in the wings? John's home was quieter than usual. The sound of his daughter's laughter bubbled in the background, but it felt distant, muted by the weight of the evening's conversation with Emily. As he settled into the living room, he recognized that the familiar chaos of family life was a comforting distraction, yet it was tinged with the anxiety of his impending professional confrontation. He could hear the voice of doubt whispering, questioning his intentions. Would being more open at work jeopardize his standing? He rubbed his temples as if trying to massage away the tension that had pooled there. The very thought of stepping into a meeting with his manager, unguarded and vulnerable, made his heart race. But a flicker of resolve ignited within him. "I want to show them my true self," he murmured to himself, tasting the words, letting them sink in. If he could hold on to the authenticity he had begun to embrace at home, perhaps he could weave it into his professional life too. The next morning, John woke earlier than usual. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, illuminating the room in a warm glow. In the stillness, he reflected on the previous night. The way Emily's reassurance had anchored him, solidified the ground beneath his feet. He turned these thoughts over in his mind, cycling through potential outcomes. Each imagined scenario fueled his decision to approach work differently. Heading into the office, he noticed the familiar scenery, a sea of gray cubicles and the hum of office chatter. The banality of it all felt stifling. As he settled at his desk, he made a vow to himself. Today, he wouldn't fall back into the mechanical responses that years of habit had trained him to deliver. Instead, he crafted a plan. Today, he would talk to Sarah, a colleague he had always respected for her insight and candor. If anyone might understand his evolving mindset, it would be her. Taking a deep breath, he summoned the courage to approach her desk. "Hey, Sarah, can we chat for a minute?" he asked, his voice steady despite the undercurrent of nerves. "Sure, what's up?" She paused, giving him her full attention. "I've been thinking a lot about our team's dynamics," he began, feeling the words spill out. "I think it's time for a change, a more genuine approach. I want us to communicate openly about our challenges. I've realized that pretending everything's perfect isn't helping anyone." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Sarah looked at him with interest rather than judgment. "That's interesting, John. I know how easy it is to feel pressure to keep up appearances here. It's refreshing to hear you say this." Encouraged by her reaction, he continued, "I want to be authentic, to build trust and teamwork, and I think it begins with being honest about our struggles." She nodded knowingly. "I agree. The more we pretend, the more isolated we become. Let's consider discussing this in our next team meeting." Feeling a sense of validation from their conversation, John allowed optimism to take root. Maybe he could redefine his place within this sterile environment. He envisioned turning the sterile cubicles into a space where vulnerability was not only accepted but celebrated. However, as the day progressed, he faced the bitter reality of response. Not everyone would welcome this shift to authenticity. An email from his manager requesting a private meeting sent a ripple of uncertainty through him. Would this be a confrontation of his newfound approach? His hands shook slightly as he clicked on the calendar alert. What if this doesn't go as planned? His mind churned with possible outcomes. What if he was misunderstood or dismissed entirely? But just as doubt swelled, he heard his daughter's voice echoing in his memory, filled with wonder and curiosity about the world. "It's not about being perfect, Dad. It's about being real." With renewed determination, he rose to meet his manager. John understood now that every step he took in his career could strike a balance between honesty and the demands of corporate life. As he walked to the meeting room, a mix of nerves and excitement filled him. He was about to confront an important juncture in his professional journey, and perhaps this moment would not only test his resolve, but could also set a precedent for future interactions. Could he forge a new path in a world that often shunned vulnerability? As he pushed open the meeting room door, one question loomed large. Was he ready to reshape not only how he viewed himself, but also how he could inspire change amidst a rigid corporate culture? As John entered the meeting room, his resolve solidified. He straightened his shoulders, taking a deep breath. Awash in a mixture of nerves and determination, he faced his manager, Mark, who looked up with a synthesized expression of expectation and curiosity. "Thanks for seeing me, Mark," he began, grounding himself in the familiar settings of their office. The stark white walls felt less suffocating today. They were cloaked in the promise of transformation. Let's get right to it. What do you want to discuss? Mark prompted, his tone casual, though John sensed the underlying scrutiny. I've been thinking a lot about our team dynamics, he articulated carefully. I believe we need to create an environment where we can openly express our uncertainties and challenges. Being vulnerable doesn't make us less competent. In fact, it could strengthen our performance. Mark's eyebrows rose, surprise momentarily washing across his face. You really think that can work? Yes, John affirmed, the conviction in his voice compelling. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of personal growth, and he recognized the urgency in the need for authentic communication, a lesson he had painfully learned through his relationship with Emily. If I've learned anything, it's that honesty fosters trust. If we can construct a space like that, our team will not only be more cohesive, but more productive. The subsequent silence felt pregnant with tension, but John stood firm, meeting Mark's gaze. He was no longer just advocating for himself. He was portraying an ethical vision grounded in equity, collaboration, and recognition of human limitations. Mark leaned back, crossing his arms. Okay, let's say I see potential in your idea. How would you propose implementing it? Let's start with an open discussion forum, maybe a monthly meeting where everyone can share challenges and ideas without judgment. Our team can function better if we understand each other on a personal level, not just professional titles. Mark was quiet for a moment, and John's heart raced as he anticipated the response. This kind of dialogue could redefine their workplace, but it also risked creating friction with colleagues who were comfortable with the status quo. Interesting proposition. I'll consider it, but I won't promise anything, Mark conceded finally, a semblance of intrigue flickering at the edges of his expression. In that moment, John felt unshackled. He had stepped out of the shadows of doubt. For the first time, he had spoken up for what he truly believed, not only for his growth, but for the betterment of those around him. As he exited the meeting, exhilaration flooded through him. Meeting his manager had felt monumental, not just as a professional milestone, but as a reflection of the man he was becoming. The silence of the office environment felt less oppressive now. He had asserted a piece of himself, tethering his personal growth to his professional aspirations. Returning home, John felt a palpable shift settle over him. He crossed the threshold of his house, greeted by the aroma of dinner simmering. Emily's laughter echoed through the halls as his daughter played with a friend, the sound reverberating with familiar warmth. It was a tangible reminder of what connection meant. That evening, Emily joined him in the living room after her friend left, a sparkle in her eyes that filled him with hope. "Dad, how was work today? You seem different." "I had an important meeting," he said, inviting her into the fabric of his day. "I talked about building a space for shared feelings and experiences. I think it could change the way we work together." Her expression morphed into one of genuine interest. "That sounds incredible," she said, leaning in with palpable enthusiasm. "Do you think those conversations will make things easier?" Absolutely. He could feel his heart swell with earnestness. Part of being a better father is learning how to be transparent in every area of my life. I want to be someone you can always talk to about anything, a person who is real and authentic. A thoughtful pause lingered before Emily tilted her head slightly, her brow furrowing with curiosity. "Are you saying you're not just my dad, but also a person with feelings?" John chuckled. The humor felt like a bridge between them. "Exactly. I'm learning that vulnerability doesn't make me weak. It simply enriches all relationships." Moments turned into an enlightening conversation, and John began to see not only his growth, but Emily's unfolding understanding of their dynamic. There was clarity in sharing his journey. It invited her on hers. "You know, it's okay to mess up. I hope we can work through anything together," he added, warmth enveloping his words. Just like I'm trying to navigate work, I want to earn your trust too. She smiled, a small but radiant light igniting in her expression. I like that, Dad, she said softly, her gaze holding warmth and trust. I'd like to talk more about what we can do together. As he sat in the glowing aura of their connection, John felt as though he had arrived at a solid juncture in life. The juxtaposition of their past struggles against their present felt liberating, a pathway paved with authenticity, ready to steer them towards a horizon graced with possibility. United by the threads of vulnerability, honesty, and a commitment to rebuild trust, John stood at the doorway of newfound fulfillment. This was what he had been striving for, not just as a father, but as a man capable of facing challenges head-on, at home and at work. With a firm grip on both realms of his life, he recognized the truth that had always echoed but remained ungrasped. Vulnerability is not a mark of weakness. Rather, it is the cornerstone of authentic connection. And in that moment, John knew he had conquered not only his internal conflicts, but had also built a firm bridge toward the future they could create together. As the night deepened, John found pride in his evolving journey. He had not only stood before Emily and revealed the man he wanted to be, but he had also forged a vision for himself both as a father and a professional. No longer shackled by regret, he was ready for the adventures ahead, set on a path that no longer felt intimidating but invigorating, with every heartbeat reminding him of the power of transformation. This is your moment. Subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like immediately to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment below with your reactions and theories about John's transformation. And don't wait even one more second to share this story with at least 5 friends who need to feel the spark of transformation. Personal overcoming.